The moonlight filtered through the dusty window of the cramped apartment where Desai sat alone. He looked at the pills scattered across the desk with a sense of quiet resignation. Beside the pills lay a photo of Saki, the woman whose absence had hollowed out his soul. He swallowed the bitter medicine, hoping for a dreamless sleep that would never end. Suddenly, a blinding circle of arcane light erupted on the floor beneath his chair. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of colors and deafening chants. When Desai opened his eyes, he was no longer in his apartment, but in a vast stone cathedral. A group of mages in white robes surrounded him, cheering as if they had won a great prize. Desai sat up and adjusted his tie, looking thoroughly unimpressed by the miracle. A young priestess named Annette rushed forward, her eyes sparkling with hope. She proclaimed that he was the hero of salvation summoned to save their dying world. Desai simply asked if there was a place nearby where he could die in peace. The entire room fell into a stunned silence at the hero's bizarre request. Annette assumed the summoning process had scrambled his poor mind. He stood up and began to wander through the halls, ignoring the guards who tried to stop him. He reached a balcony and looked out over a city that looked like a painting brought to life. Even in a world of magic, the air smelled of the same old human greed. Annette caught up to him, clutching a crystal ball that glowed with a strange inner light. She explained that every hero receives a unique gift, and it was time to test his. Desai placed his hand on the cold glass, expecting nothing but more disappointment. Words began to manifest in the air around him, written in ink that floated like smoke. The crystal identified his power as Storyteller, an ability never seen before in this realm. Desai realized that his words could now physically alter the reality of this world. A sudden explosion rocked the city gates, sending a plume of black smoke into the sky. Monsters known as the Gloomborn were breaching the outer defenses of the capital. Annette grabbed Desai's sleeve and pleaded for him to use his new power to help. He sighed, complaining that even the afterlife required manual labor. They hurried to the town square where the first of the beasts had appeared. A massive shadow beast towered over a group of cowering civilians. Desai pulled a fountain pen from his pocket and clicked it with a sharp sound. "The beast finds the ground beneath it to be nothing more than thin air," he whispered. Instantly, the cobblestones beneath the monster vanished into a bottomless void. The effort caused Desai to cough violently, blood flecking his pale lips. Annette rushed to heal him, her hands glowing with a soft restorative green light. He pushed her away, stating that he didn't want to be saved, just finished. In the distance, a mysterious figure in silver armor watched them from a rooftop. This was one of the older heroes who had long ago abandoned their duty for power. Desai looked up at the foreign stars, wondering if Saki was looking at the same sky. He knew that if she was in this world, she was likely in as much trouble as he was. A small talking cat girl named Tama leapt from the shadows, landing on a nearby barrel. She sniffed the air and declared that Desai smelled like the end of the world. Desai replied that it was the nicest compliment he had received all day. Their conversation was cut short as a group of royal knights surrounded the trio. The lead knight accused Desai of using forbidden dark arts to defeat the monster. Annette tried to defend him, but the knights were clearly not interested in the truth. Desai raised his hands, inviting them to take him to the darkest dungeon they had. As he was led away, he noticed a strange mark on the knight's neck that pulsed with dark energy. The corruption in this world went far deeper than just a few monsters at the gate. From the shadows, a voice whispered that the writer had finally arrived to finish the script. Desai realized that his summoning was not an accident, but a deliberate act of war. The revelation of a premeditated war hung heavy in the air like a suffocating shroud. Desai looked down at the scratched surface of his wooden coffin, contemplating the cruelty of fate. Annette gripped her holy staff tightly as she sensed a surge of malevolent energy approaching the village. Tama bared her feline teeth and let out a low, guttural growl toward the horizon. 3 figures clad in gleaming, over-designed golden armor appeared at the village gates. The leader of the trio, a man named Elton, laughed as he kicked over a villager's water barrel. He claimed they were the true heroes of this world, destined to take whatever they desired. Desai stepped forward from the shadows, his face devoid of any heroic passion. He asked Elton if his heroic duty included bullying people who couldn't fight back. Infuriated by the writer's lack of respect, Elton drew a massive claymore pulsing with red light. Desai didn't flinch as the blade's tip stopped inches from his throat. Annette rushed to Desai's side, her staff glowing with a protective silver light. Elton sneered at her, calling her a traitor for siding with a lowly, suicidal failed author. Tama pounced from a nearby roof, her claws extending into shimmering energy blades. The other two heroes blocked her strike easily, sending her tumbling back into the dirt. Desai sighed, realizing that his companions were currently outmatched by raw stats. He opened his notebook and began to write a new character arc for his friends. Blue ink began to flow off the paper, swirling around Annette and Tama like liquid starlight. Desai muttered that every side character deserves a moment of absolute brilliance. Annette felt a surge of ancient divinity coursing through her veins, her eyes turning pure white. Tama's fur stood on end as her physical form shifted into a more feral, lightning-fast silhouette. Elton backed away, sensing the overwhelming pressure now radiating from the girls. Annette slammed her staff down, creating a shockwave of holy light that shattered the hero's golden armor. Tama moved like a bolt of lightning, disarming the two sub-heroes before they could even blink. The corrupt heroes collapsed into the mud, their pride broken along with their equipment. Desai walked up to Elton and whispered that true heroes don't need titles to protect people. The villagers began to cheer, but Desai only felt a deep sense of emptiness in his chest. He wondered if Saki was out there somewhere, perhaps suffering under similar heroes. Annette approached him, her divine glow fading but her eyes full of new respect. She thanked him for believing in her potential when she didn't believe in herself. Tama jumped onto Desai's shoulders, rubbing her cheek against his messy hair. Suddenly, the sky turned a bruised purple, and the air temperature dropped rapidly. A massive shadow loomed over the village, cast by something flying high above the clouds. The villagers fled back into their homes, sensing a threat far greater than the fallen heroes. Desai looked up, his eyes narrowing as he recognized the silhouette of a legendary dragon. From the dragon's back, a voice echoed through the valley, calling Desai by his real name. It was a voice he hadn't heard since the day he left his own world. He realized that the corruption of the heroes was just a distraction for something much worse. The ground began to tremble as the dragon descended, its wings creating a gale that nearly knocked them over. As the dust cleared, the figure on the dragon's back stepped down, holding a familiar pendant. Desai took a step forward, his heart hammering against his ribs in a way he thought impossible. The stranger pulled back their hood, but before their face could be seen, a blinding light engulfed everything. The pendant began to scream a name that Desai had tried so hard to forget. The pendant pulsed with a blinding light as Saki's name echoed through the cavern like a long-lost prayer. Desai felt the weight of his notebook grow heavy, as if the ink itself was yearning for the story's end. Annette stepped forward, her mace glowing with a divine radiance that pushed back the creeping darkness. They began their trek toward the Forbidden Lands, a place where the laws of reality were said to unravel. Every step felt like a page being torn from Desai's own soul, leaving him increasingly hollow. The air in the Forbidden Lands tasted like ozone and ancient ink, smelling of stories yet to be written. Tama clutched Desai's sleeve, her cat ears twitching at the sound of whispers coming from the trees. Desai realized that this world wasn't just a place, but a physical manifestation of a narrative long abandoned. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted, revealing a staircase of floating books leading into the clouds. Desai began to climb, each book beneath his feet flashing with memories of his life back in Japan. He saw his old desk, the rejection letters, and the moment he decided he had nothing left to say. But then he saw Saki's face, smiling at him across a coffee shop table, and his heart skipped a beat. At the top of the stairs stood the world editor, a giant entity made of shifting tectonic plates and ink. The editor spoke with a voice like grinding stone, demanding to know why a failed writer dared to enter the sanctum. Desai pulled out his fountain pen, the tip glistening with the tears he had shed for his lost love. "I am the one who writes the ending of this story," Desai shouted against the cosmic wind. He began to write in the air, his words turning into golden chains that bound the world editor. The corruption that had plagued the otherworlders began to dissolve under the weight of Desai's truth. In the center of the dissolving editor, a small, glowing figure began to emerge. Saki opened her eyes and looked at Desai, her gaze breaking through years of sorrow. She explained that she had become the anchor for this world's logic, sacrificing her life to prevent its collapse. Desai realized that to save her, he would have to find a new anchor for the world. He opened his notebook to the very last page and placed his hand upon it. "Take my story," he whispered, "and let it be the foundation for a world where people can choose their own ends." The notebook absorbed his essence, transforming into a massive, crystal pillar that pierced the heavens. Saki was gently lowered to the ground, her physical form restored and her spirit freed. Annette and Tama ran toward her, looking around desperately for the writer who had saved them. But Desai was nowhere to be seen, having vanished along with the old laws of the world. Somewhere in a quiet corner of the city, a small bookstore appeared out of thin air. A man with messy black hair sat behind the counter, sipping tea and looking at a blank sheet of paper. The bell above the door chimed, and a familiar silhouette stood in the doorway. "I've been looking for you, Desai," she said, her voice trembling with joy. Desai looked up and smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes for the first time. He realized that he didn't want to die anymore, he wanted to see what happened on the next page. The corrupt heroes were gone, replaced by a world that valued life over destiny. Annette and Tama eventually found the shop, becoming regular visitors who brought chaos and laughter. Saki stayed by his side, helping him turn his experiences into the greatest epic the world had ever known. The writer who once wanted to end his story had finally found a reason to keep writing. As the sun set over the new world, the sound of scratching ink filled the air with promise. And so, the story of the melancholic hero reached its true happy beginning.